Welcome, everyone, to Skagit Land Trust Speaker Series. My name is Sarah Gardam, and I'm an outreach coordinator here at the Trust. And tonight's talk is our second Speaker Series events, or no, it's our third one, actually. And we're really glad you could carve out some time to join us for Hiking Close to Home with Jack Hartt. And without further ado, I'll introduce Jack Hartt. He was born and raised near the shores of the Salish Sea in Seattle. After earning a degree in forest science with a specialty in park management, Jack worked for Washington State Parks for over 40 years before retiring in 2017. He recently, with Mary Beth Crandall, Jack co-authored a book called Hiking Close to Home, a guidebook to hikes and trails of Whidbey, Fidalgo, and Guaymas Islands. So we're really excited to have Jack here to show us some of the beautiful images he's captured and to share his experience with local hiking. So, Jack, I will turn this over to you and stop sharing my screen so that you can find your presentation.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Sarah and Skagit Land Trust, for hosting this opportunity to talk about these lands that we love. And thank you for everybody who's joined us here. I'm looking forward to spending some time chatting about all these places that we do love and encouraging you to get out and experience hikes that you've done many, many times and maybe some new trails as well. This is going to be interactive in some ways, in the sense that I would be very happy if you add anything that you're interested in saying in the chat section. And a little bit into this program, I'm going to ask you to do an assignment for me. And if you want to do it just on pen and paper, that's great. Or if you want to just enter your answers in the chat section, then we could also find out what you're thinking on a subject I'm going to throw at you. So I look forward to meeting you all in person sometimes. Someday. It's a little difficult being on Zoom to interact with you all, but that's the way it is as we go through this world, and we can share with so many people without having to spend time hiking around. So who am I? Who is this Jack guy anyway? Well, if you look at my family, my dad is the one taking the picture, and I'm that little kid with the arrow pointing at him, the only one smiling in the picture pretty much. You'll notice that there are 5 packs scattered around under that arrow there. And there are 6 of us, if you include my dad, and I'm smiling because I didn't have to carry the pack back in those days. Well, things changed. I graduated from high school somehow and then went to college. And during my college years, I worked for Rocky Mountain National Park for several years. And then as a backcountry ranger, hiking up all the high peaks I could find in the Colorado Rockies. And then I worked for 40 years for Washington State Parks. Can't believe it was 40 years. That's a long time. The last 14 of those were as a ranger, the manager of Deception Pass State Park. I retired from there, as Sarah said, in 2017, and then kept on hiking. I love going out into the wild places of our lands, especially here in Skagit County. And things changed through the years. For one thing, I got older, but also our lands are changing. Our climate is changing. Our world is changing in many different ways. And I was just looking back. Just by the way, you see this person in the picture. You're going to see a lot of her. It is my wife. We've been married for a couple of years, and you're going to see a lot of her backside, and sometimes you'll see her front side as well. But if you just look around in the picture for somebody wearing a long skirt, it's probably my wife, Catherine. So you'll see her again. But the lands have changed. As Sarah was mentioning, this has always been the home for thousands of years for the Samish and the Swinomish and many other tribes who have lived and continue to live in this area. They made this their home, and they lived on the land in a way that worked with the land. They didn't have issues with climate change that they were responsible for. They lived on shellfish and fish and things that they could find growing around the area, as you all know. And they lived a very active life and a very happy life, very artistic and spiritual people as well. Mary Lyons of the Ojibwe tribe said, "When we talk about land, land is part of who we are. It's a mixture of our blood, our past, our current, and our future. We carry our ancestors in us, and they are around us. as you all do also. So I again also acknowledge the tribes who have lived here and continue to live here and continue to teach us their ways of working with the earth. And we appreciate what they have done. It's important to understand the long-standing history that has brought you to reside on the land and to seek to understand your place within that history. It was about 1791 that the Spanish explorers first came to the Northwest. The Samish and Sunamish came out to meet them along with many other tribes, welcomed them with open arms, and us Indo-Europeans soon settled the land and changed it fairly drastically, fairly quickly. This is Anacortes in the late 1800s. Some industry starting to develop along with the houses and other things going on. And over the years, Anacortes in particular has grown up around the water, changed and expanded and continued to expand. In the 1850s, we had the Industrial Revolution sweeping over the world, and our entire world changed. Here's Detroit in the year 1900. And you can see this is what it was like to live in Detroit in those days. What do you think about living in a place like that? Or what do you think about living in a place like this, downtown Seattle, not too long ago? I don't think this is what I would want to live in, and yet I grew up in Seattle. I know it very well. The traffic, the crowds, the big buildings, the noise, it's what we live with. It's our culture. It's the way things are. Well, we have gained a lot because of our culture, because of our industrial revolution. We have longer lives, we have good health systems, we have bigger homes, we have more food, and we have more stuff. And then we have more people, a lot of us. But what has changed? What have we lost? Our climate, our health, half of all wildlife, and the list goes on. Well, I was retired, wanted to still contribute somehow to our society, to our culture. So a friend of mine, Mary Beth Crandall, and I put together a book called Hiking Close to Home, just sharing all the trails that we could find that we loved here on Whidbey, on Fidalgo, and on Guimas Islands. And so I have a question for you. I bet many of you are hikers. I know many of you are hikers. I saw some of your names as you were signing in. And it's good to see you again. At least see your names. I wish I could see you in person. But a question for you. And I'd love to have you put an answer down if you want into the chat section, or just jot it down if you would. But please jot down 2 or 3 reasons. Why do you go hiking? Why do you go hiking? What's in it for you? What do you get out of an experience on the trails? Think about it and spend a minute or two just writing out some answers, putting them in chat, putting them just on pen and paper, whatever is convenient for you. Why do you go hiking? We're going to get to our answers in a little bit. So please spend some time, just write down, why do you go hiking? And let's compare our notes when we get towards the end. One reason that I like is that it gives us a healthy life. And the secret to a healthier, longer life is 10,000 steps a day. Is that what we've always heard? 10,000 steps a day. I bet we've all heard that. Do you know where that came from? The 1964 Olympics. An entrepreneur in Tokyo, Japan came up with an idea to have a manpo meter. And you're wondering what a manpo meter is? The translation is a 10,000 step meter. You can see it on this lady's belt there, hanging on there, tracking steps. And he just made it up. He said 10,000 steps is what you should have for a good life. And so that was the mantra for the next however many years since 1964. We have watches that tell us how far we've gone, phones that tell us how far we've gone. We're tracking how many steps we take. Why do we track it? Because Mr. whatever his name was came up with a meter to measure it all. So some people did some studies. And if you look at this chart, it doesn't make a lot of sense until you look at the bottom, which says how many steps you've taken in a day. And then on the left side, the risk of death. And you can see that it goes down very steeply until you get about, oh, I don't know, 7 or 8,000 steps. And then it starts to slow down. Still better and better the more steps you get. But somewhere around 8,000 steps is the magic number of really reducing our risk of death. So we go hiking. That's one good reason. How many steps do you think the average American takes? About 3,000 steps a day. Now, some of these people could use a few more steps, it looks like, especially that cat. That is one fat cat. But we spend a lot of time sitting. I'm sitting right now at a computer, as some of these people are, on our phones, watching TV, in the car, just sitting around. We do a lot of sitting. We sit a lot. And they're now discovering that sitting is the new smoking. 8 hours a day of sitting increases our risk of death by 59%. That's huge. And there are some days I know when I'm buckling down to work on my computer, I might spend 8 hours a day, and it's not good for me. So, walking 10,000 steps or 8,000 or whatever you can get up to, what does it do to our body? It improves our heart health for sure, reduces obesity as we burn calories, reduces the risk of diabetes, lowers our blood pressure, improves joint health. Using our joints keeps them healthy if we use them right. Reduces depression, reduces dementia by 50% according to the studies, boosts immunity, gives you better sleep. Yes. Increases our energy. That's a lot of good things. Now, I'm a busy guy. I think I am anyway. And I know a lot of you are busy, and we have lots of things going on. Now, I'm going to play this, and Sarah, let me know if the volume doesn't come through, but let's see what happens here. Is that coming through for volume?
I can hear it.
Excellent.
Yep.
It's time. Right now.
What now? What are we actually doing here?
Seriously.
I feel absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Since I've been in here, all of the stresses of life, I literally haven't thought about any of that.
The smells, the sounds, the trees. If you don't mind, you guys can go. I'm happy to remain here.
Where will you get your next dose is a good question. Whoops, let's move on. Mountain trails, ocean trails, any trail, even a city park, are ways to get our dose. So we're going to talk about some of those trails. We're going to start on Whidbey Island and then work our way up to Fidalgo and Guimas and local trails. We're going to stay on the west end of Skagit County. I know Skagit Land Trust has some great trails east of there, but we're going to focus on the local areas right here for now. Northern Whidbey Island. Eby's Landing. I bet almost all of you have been to Eby's Landing. If you haven't, that's the next place you should go. Well, I'm going to say that a lot if uh, I'm not careful. I was here in 1974. A man by the name of Albert Heath was trying to protect these properties, working with different land organizations to find some way to protect the farmland and this beautiful place. So I came here and I was a student in college and just fell in love with Eby's Landing, Eby's Bluff, Perigos Lagoon down below. The storms coming across are on a very warm day. 5 miles of trails hiking along the beaches, along the bluffs. An amazing place with wonderful views. Just north of there, Fort Eby, 1975, a year later, I spent a night under that tree that you can see on the left side of your screen there. Slept there. It was kind of a no man's land at the time. Negotiations were underway to make this a state park. And I came up here on a whim just to see what it would be like, see if I could actually help make it a state park. Slept under there under a blood red full moon, and it just had a great time exploring and experiencing this place. Old army bunkers that you can still explore through, the great meadows looking out over the water, bike trails, hiking trails, miles and miles of trails at Fort Eby, throughout the woods and along the beach. West Point Bluffs. Now, many of you may not know this place. This is the west end of Whidbey Island. If you look at a map, it's between Joseph Whidbey State Park to the north and Hasty Lake Road to the south. 2.5 miles along the water, totally remote from any other intrusions. 2.5 miles without any houses or any other intrusions on this beach. Now, you do have to be careful about tide lines. That's one concern. Make sure the tide is falling or at least going to stay low while you're out there. A 1/4 mile stretch of this was in private ownership, and they were able to sell it to the Whidbey Camino Land Trust, allowing us all to now access this 2.5 mile stretch of wild beach. Beautiful place to go. Just north of there, as I mentioned, is Joseph Whidbey State Park. Several hundred acres of lowland beach and upland forests. Great place to go in the winter because the trails stay fairly dry and you can really get around. Now here's one I bet almost none of you have been to because it's not very well known for one thing, and it's not even very large. It's only about 50 acres. It's west of Oak Harbor, southwest of Oak Harbor, and it's shaped kind of like a lollipop. You go out and back around the meadow here. A man by the name of Dr. George Fairfax donated this parcel to protect it for others to enjoy long after he was gone. Named it after his late wife, Dell, so it's called the Dell Fairfax Reserve. Beautiful place just to walk around a meadow and enjoy the quiet rural area. And here's a city park, Oak Harbor Waterfront. 3 miles of trail through town. It has playgrounds, it has spray parks, it has bridges over the water that you can go explore along the trails, but it also has wetlands, forested lands, beaches that you can go out to. For a city park, it's pretty amazing. Another fairly new trail that we can now go on is Strawberry Point Preserve. It's up on the northeast side of Oak Harbor. Large meadow, and then the hillside that you can see in the background has trails going across that as well. And Bruiser, an elk, all by himself. He has no mate. He's been over here for, I don't know, 10 years now, living somewhere near the Strawberry Point Reserve, and I had the luck to actually see him one day as he wandered out into the meadow from the woods nearby. If you ever have a chance to get out there, you might see him too. Trails go through the uplands and give a good experience of what it's like to be in a rural forested area again. Deguala State Park on the east side of northern Whidbey Island, about a 1/2 mile of land, trails going through the forest. This was owned by the Department of Natural Resources. They logged it, at least where they could, and then sold it to state parks so that we could now open it up to the public. There are some pretty special trees where the Department of Natural Resources did not log it. This is called the Big Tree. Isn't that an original name? The Big Tree. It's down almost to the water's edge. The water is the beach is about a mile long here. Mile long beach, totally untouched by any human influence. That's pretty rare. Think about Puget Sound, how much of our beaches have been developed into houses or cities or whatever. This is totally wild land, still interacting with the beachlands. Goose Rock, moving into Deception Pass State Park itself. Many of you have been to the top of this, I'm sure. The trails all around it, and then one trail up to the very top, a little over 400 feet high. From there, you get some incredible views. This one is looking south over Whidbey Island, and you can also look to the west over the end of Deception Pass. Great place to go in the winter because the trails are very rocky and therefore fairly dry. Just watch out you don't slip on the slippery rocks, as we learned from our experiences. Hoipus Point, just below Goose Rock. This used to be a drivable road. When I was the manager at the park, we closed off the road so that hikers, bikers, kids with strollers, whatever you need to do, you can hike out there on this paved road for a mile out to the point. Or you can take the beach, a mile-long beach, again, untouched by any development, and sit in a tree like my wife Catherine is doing, or enjoying the beach, wherever takes you all the way out to the point where there are views of Mount Baker and Hope Island. And then on the way back, you can look at Deception Pass. Some great views out over Deception Pass. Let's move up to Fidalgo Island, closer to home because I live in Anacortes. Lighthouse Point on the southwest corner of Fidalgo Island. Start at Bowman Bay, hike out to Lottie Bay, where I found this artistic design carved or scraped into the beach. Isn't that gorgeous? Somebody spent a lot of time creating that. A beautiful piece of work, which the tide then erased a few hours later. The trail winds through the forest out to the point where there's no lighthouse, but there is a light bulb which guides mariners in through Deception Pass. But from there, there's great views of the bridge, and you can look out over Rosario Head as well. Speaking of Rosario Beach. Now, I've always thought of this as kind of the heart and soul of Deception Pass to me, the place where I really feel like you're away from everything and you get a chance to just soak up what Deception Pass is all about. The CCC built shelters throughout the park, including that one I just showed you there. And I highly recommend a book by a really good friend of mine and me, Two Hands and a Shovel, talks about the Civilian Conservation Corps history at Deception Pass. Rosario has tide pools that are now being restored. They were destroyed by too many kids using it over the years, but for the past couple of decades, it has been protected a little better, and we're starting to see wildlife come back. And it can climb up to the top. That's my grandson climbing with my daughter up there, so I have to point them out because I love them so much. Then we get to the top with its absolutely magnificent, stupendous views, looking out over the Strait of Juan de Fuca. And I used to live on Pass Lake. While I was there, I had the privilege of building a trail from Pass Lake House, where I lived, to the parking lot at Pass Lake. And as long as we were building trails, we started to build one out towards the Jeanette Overlook area in Naked Man Valley. Now, Naked Man Valley is a whole nother story I wish we had time to talk about. But we hike from this trail, you can hike up to the Jeanette Overlook. And then from there, you can look down into Naked Man Valley. And from there, there's now a trail that goes even further north, across some bridges, past the Big Cedar Trail. Aren't these original names? Big Cedar. Look how huge that thing is. Putting a sign up for the new trail being built, and then connecting all the way to the Anacortes Community Forest lands. Now, this was a dream of a man by the name of John Tersey. Many of you met John. He worked for the Civilian Conservation Corps at Deception Pass State Park back in 1934. And he loved the area so much, he stayed here for the rest of his life, a very generous man. But his idea was to connect Deception Pass with the Anacortes Community Forest lands At the time, all you could do was follow a road that would get us to the park, a 3-mile route on busy roads. And so his idea was, let's just have a trail that follows through the park out to the Anacortes Forest Lands. And in his final days, we were able to get that trail dedicated in his name. The John Tercey Trail makes that connection, and a great experience to hike all the way from Mount Erie, if you wish, all the way into Deception Pass State Park. Just north of Deception Pass is Sharp Park. Kathleen Sharp, one of the donors of this park's south end, once expressed, "It's my desire that for all time, this property shall provide a respite for mankind's body and soul." What a great way to express it, right? A respite for mankind's body and soul. Look at the places that you can explore as you go through Sharp Park. It was added on with the Montgomery Dubai headlands back in 2004, expanding the park all the way down to the waterfront, adding trails, a place that you can truly have a respite for your body and soul. And then there's the Anacortes Community Forest lands themselves. I don't know how to do justice to that in a very short presentation. All I can say is I hope you've all had the chance to experience as many of the trails as possible. Now, there are miles and miles, dozens of miles of trails, dozens of trails alone, maybe hundreds of miles of trails, scattered all through the forest lands. We're going to touch on just a few. Whistle Lake being one I just hiked around a few days ago and shared on the blog post that we do. One of my favorites. It's a rough and tumble trail. It gets you going up, it gets you going down, it gets you going in and out. Beautiful places to explore. Around the lakeshore, up into the woods, wildlife abounds. You can see Mount Erie in the distance. Oh, speaking of Mount Erie, accessible all the seasons of the year. Here, Kath and I are up in the middle of the winter. We were just up there, was that yesterday? Exploring again in the springtime. Hiking up a trail like this, doesn't that look like fun? It's a rough and tumble trail, to say the least, getting up to Mount Erie from the Whistle Lake or other access points to get to Mount Erie, but worth every step of the way when you get to the top. 1,273 feet high. Look at that incredible view. A similar view, different, but similar, from Sugarloaf. About a mile-long trail to get up to the top of Sugarloaf. Not as high, but a good view out to the west from Sugarloaf Peak. Hartt Lake, one of the major lakes in the ACFL. Here it is in the snow and in the summertime. A relaxing place. And if you're not familiar with the old-growth forest at the south end of Hartt Lake, I encourage you to do so. It was threatened by the actual director of the Department of Natural Resources at the time, who wanted to let some of his cronies build a condo on the shores of Hartt Lake. And people like Bob Rose, pictured here, put up a fight with Evergreen Islands and others to say, no way. This is not the place for condos. This is the place for wildlife and for people to experience what an old-growth forest is. So they saved that forest for us so that we can enjoy it today. Nearby is Little Cranberry Lake, a wild place indeed, winter or summer or any time of the year. Place to explore, to get out, have some adventures, listen to wildlife. Transition Fidalgo has bird studies going on around Cranberry Lake, counting and studying the bird life, seeing as it changes through the years. Gorgeous place to go hiking around. Now, I lived in Skyline for 3 years with my wife, and Washington Park was our backyard. Can you imagine a backyard like that? I couldn't, but there it was, just a block away. So we'd go hiking there at least every other day, it seems. This was way back when a man by the name of Tonius Hovakost settled on Fidalgo Island in the 1870s, opened a hotel in what was then Flounder Bay. We now call it Skyline Marina. And he donated 8 acres of the land overlooking that bay for a park in 1911. More acres were added through the coming years, and the city bought some of that property, such as Sunset Beach here, under construction to become a park. Now we have over 200 acres of wild, beautiful trails, springtime, fall time, whatever time you get a chance to go out there. Washington Park has great loop trails, great out and back trails. I had a chance to love that as often as I could and miss it greatly. Ship Harbor. My, has this place changed? Used to be a cannery, multiple canneries for salmon, the very busy salmon cannery location. Those ceased when the fisheries changed and became, as you know, the ferry dock for Washington State ferries. The evidence of the canneries still remains, but now the area also has trails. Along the beach, you can hike or out into the wetlands, enjoying the wildlife that comes to serenade you as you're walking along the trail, or out on the waterfront, watching the ferries come and go, watching the wildlife offshore. And then another park, downtown Anacortes, and I mean downtown. There's the high school field on the right and Volunteer Park on the left, over a mile of trail, wandering through the wetlands, up into the maple forests here in the wintertime and in the summertime, cottonwood forests that smell so great in the spring. And then nearby is Cap Santa State Park. I know some of you actually live up in there. Steve Johnson, if you're around, I envy where you get to live too. Cap Santa's East Trail used to come to a place where there's an amphitheater. The amphitheater is still there, a little bit overgrown, but if you hike the East Trail of Cap Santa, you can still see the rock seats in place where they used to have canoe races. Indians would race canoes around the point there and other boat celebrations going on. Hundreds of people would come celebrate the waterfront festival. Well, Kath and I still enjoy that place, looking out, resting here in the amphitheater, looking out at the beautiful view. It is a beautiful place to go hiking, the east side of Cap Santa. These trails still there to take you up to the top. Get these great views from what is now a rotary viewpoint. Top of Cap Santa now has a viewpoint created for handicap access and anybody else who wants to have a good view out towards the east, across Saddlebag Island and Hat Island and out to Mount Baker. And of course to the west, looking out over Anacortes, daytime or night. And then there's the Tommy Thompson Trail. Actually kind of starts right here, but this is still Rotary Park at Cap Santa. Goes through Cap Santa Marina, through Anacortes, out to the east end by the refineries. All 4 miles of trail. You can hike, you can bike, you can jog, you can stroll with young ones. You can pick blackberries even in the right time of the year. Great place for the city of Anacortes to have this right on its waterfront. Someday it'd be nice to connect it with Ship Harbor and Guimas Channel Trail. Someday. Let's see if we can make that happen, eh? And then there's Quanquangala, Dog Island, which we all know as Guimas Island. The Samish had a special dog out there. They named it the Dog Island because of the dogs that they raised that had fur that they could turn into blankets. We're going to talk about 4 different hikes. Oh, there's Jack Island at the very top. I just had to mention Jack Island is out there. I've never been there yet. I need to get out there. We're going to talk about Guimas Mountain, Peaches Preserve, Kelly's Point, and Dogwoods. Each of these is a special place. Now, I really regret that we can't go hiking Sunday on Guimas Mountain together, but give me a call. Maybe we can go up there someday, or maybe in the future we can still do that. Lovely trail. I was just there Saturday. Gorgeous hike up the trail. Right now, the camas is blooming up on the top. This picture was taken when the ocean spray is in bloom. That might be next month. But views out over Mount Baker, views south over Anacortes and the ferry docks, views west from the top out over the San Juan Islands. You know, this place was up for sale in 2007 and was going to be developed for houses. Skagit Land Trust stepped in and somehow Ask Molly what the story is, but somehow she and the rest of the Skagit Land Trust team raised millions of dollars to protect Guimas Island for all of us for the future. In just 2 years, it was dedicated as part of Skagit Land Trust Holdings. Amazing work they did for that. Peaches Preserve, another special saved place. This was an industrial waste area once upon a time. It was up for sale. It was going to be houses. And the Bullitt Foundation was brought to attention that this could be purchased if they would wish to step in and help. Well, Priscilla Patsy Bullitt Collins stepped in, visited the property, saw its beautiful location, looking over at Anacortes there, right across the water. She donated $1.5 million for the purchase of this property way back when. The land was rechristened in her honor because of her childhood name, which was Peaches. They called her Peaches, and so now it is Peaches Preserve. There are trails along the uplands where you can walk near the wetlands. You can also walk along the beach. And if the wind's blowing, you can even jump into the wind. Crazy people do that. Then there's Kelly's Point. In 2018, the Skagit Land Trust purchased 27 acres and 3,000 feet of shoreline that comprise Kelly's Point Conservation Area. 425 families, organizations, and businesses donated to this campaign. Excuse me. I get choked up thinking about it. How fast, how well they were able to raise the money to set aside this land with its high bluffs right over the water and right on the Bellingham Straits. Beautiful beach land, about a half mile of beach, which, if you come back onto the land, you can hike up to Dogwoods from there. Dogwoods. Now, that's a strange name for a place. But again, this island is the island of dogs. Two people by the name of Birch and David bought some property up here, up to 120 acres now they have purchased. It was old cut-over land, really a mess of an area, but they are restoring the natural habitat, which is a special habitat of paper birch, Douglas fir, and cedars. They have built trails, over 3 miles of trails through the dogwoods. And one interesting factor that they have done is they allow dogs off leash here, as long as the dogs are well behaved, such as our dog Murphy. Most of the time he's well behaved. And we take him up here as often as we can because he loves to wander these trails, and we love to explore the many hidden gems that these trails offer. Look at the tree growing out of a stump. The tree is huge. The stump was even bigger. Murphy exploring through a cedar glen that's in there. Now here's David pictured in the center. Birch is in the center. David is on his left, our right, being awarded the Skagit Land Trust annual meeting. Two wonderful people, especially when you read what they wrote as their vision and mission for the Dogwoods. Dogwoods is a sanctuary, a sacred space to celebrate personal, ecological, and cultural restoration, a place that fosters love for the land, respect for its original stewards, and connections to nature, ourselves, and our community. That's well put. They're good people. Get to know them if you can. Cypress Island. Just a real quick overview of Cypress. If you haven't been out there, you need a boat somehow to get out there, so kayak or rent a boat or whatever you need to do. Miles and miles of trails, up and down, lots of elevation gain, lots of elevation loss, but some pretty cool places to explore, including Eagle Cliff on the northwest corner, a beautiful spot to look out over the San Juan Islands. And then there's Kickett Island. I wish I had more time. I'm looking at my clock and going, nope, I'd love to spend half an hour with you talking about Kickett Island if we could. It's one of my really loved places. It's not an island except at high tide. So if you want to walk out to Kickett Island, you don't need a boat. Just make sure you don't go at a super high tide. On the island, it was untouched for years and years. A house was built on it about 1950. The house has now been removed, so it really looks like the island is untouched. It's over a mile long, a beautiful place that you can go to. Forested trails through old growth, beaches that look out towards Deception Pass, almost untouched for years and years. What's really special about this place is that the tribe had been using this as shellfish grounds for millennia. When it became private property, the owners wouldn't let the tribe get onto the island to harvest shellfish. In order for state parks to acquire the property, we wanted to acquire the shellfish beds too. And the tribe says, well, those belong to us still. So what are we going to do? And the tribes and Washington State Park says, why don't we just share? And so Skagit Island is shared with Washington State Parks and the Swinomish tribe, the only piece of property that I know of in the United States owned by two different governments. And what a great cooperative effort that is. Great place to explore. All right, one more trail. Let's go out to Padilla Bay. I know it's not on Fidalgo or Guimas or any of these other islands. It's on the mainland, but it's pretty close to home. Busy parking lot here on this day. It's about a 2-mile long trail of hard-packed gravel. Great place in the wintertime if the wind's not blowing too hard. Right along the shores of Padilla Bay. Here it is at low tide. And if you can see on your screen, there are a bunch of little bumps on the mud there. I don't know if you can see it. I can see it on my screen because it's a pretty big screen, but those bumps are mud snails, and they are packed so tightly all across Padilla Bay now. There are 15 billion, that's billion with a B, 15 billion in Padilla Bay, taking over the environment. We have a problem out there. Further north of the Padilla Bay Shoreline Trail is the Padilla Bay Interpretive Center, with a long stretch of beach down below it, a tunnel leading up to the center, and then an upland trail beyond that, and a museum that has great interpretive exhibits for kids of all ages. This is a picture taking inside just one of the many, many exhibits they have. Now, I do a blog along with Mary Beth Crandall every week about a hike of the week. And here's one that we did talking about the Shoreline Trail. And I mentioned there are 15 billion of those snails on that beach. If you wish to subscribe or just look at the blog, go to hikingclosetehome.weebly.com. And we'll have this in the news that you'll be getting about this presentation. Or you can just email me at skagitjack@outlook.com. And you can also get the books from us if you wish. They're on sale, and you'll have the website address if you wish, Skagit. If you want a discount, just send me an email and I can get you a discount, much cheaper than buying it online. Skagit Land Trust. Those are a lot of trails that I've covered. There are a lot more that Skagit Land Trust owns and manages and takes care of. The lands we love. I just wanted to highlight what they own in very overview sense here. We've covered many of these trails that we're talking about right here, Dogwoods and ACFL and Tercey Trail and all those. We did not get to Samish Island, great trail out there too, Blanchard Mountain and several others. And then upriver, many more trails. Ann Wolford Park is a great place. Cumberland is one of my favorites upriver to go to. Some great trails up there as well, and just great places to protect and preserve areas that we need taken care of in our changing world. And they're continuing their efforts. Places like Big Rock, coming online soon. What a wonderful place that's going to be for us to go hiking. Which brings me back to a question. What is your favorite trail? What's one of your 5-star trails that you love to go to, that we would recommend to anybody if they come visiting in the area? Where would you take them? Well, there are some places that only get 1-star reviews. I'm going to talk about some of those with you. For example, here's a 1-star review for a park you might know. Save yourself some money. Boil some water at home. Don't go there. What park are they talking about? Yellowstone National Park. They gave it 1 star. Really? What about, all I saw was a lake, mountains, and some trees. The Grand Tetons National Park. 1 star. How about this place? There's no wow factor at that park. 1 star for Olympic National Park. How about this one? 30 seconds to see the view and nothing else to do there. Yeah, Deception Pass. Nothing else to do there. That made me laugh so hard. Nothing else to do. But then again, I want to do more than just look at the bridge and then look for, I don't know, what else do you do? Okay, so hiking isn't for everyone. I understand that. You notice that's why the wilderness is mostly empty compared to our cities. Well, it wouldn't be smart of me to talk about how to get into all these places without mentioning how to be safe if you're going to go there. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about things that hopefully we all know, but just to make sure, caution, beware of the classic 10 essentials. Everybody knows these. These are the King James Whitaker standard version. A map, compass, sunglasses, extra clothing, headlamp, flashlight, first aid supplies, fire starter, matches, knife, extra food, etc., etc. Yeah, we all know that stuff, right? I have an 8 list for day hiking that you need to have with you if you really want to do it right. One is water. I've run out of water on hikes that I really shouldn't have. Hot days, really good thing to have. Make sure it's metal-sided or some kind of reusable container, of course. Snacks. I'm an eater. I love eating, so make sure you bring snacks along the trail if I'm on the hike anyway. A bathroom kit. Toilet paper for sure. A cooler cloth if you are up to that. A sealable trash container. Not only for your own garbage, hopefully you don't leave any behind, but maybe somebody else's garbage too. Sometimes I just stuff it in my pockets, but it really would be smart to have a container. An extra layer for cold or rain, and those of you who live in the Northwest already know that very well. It can be a nice sunny day and you get to where you're going and it's freezing cold, and then the clouds roll in and it starts to rain, right? Sunscreen and sunglasses. Sunglasses to help keep down the burning into your eyes and the sunscreen for everywhere else. It's the right thing to do. I did not do that for most of my career, and my skin shows you what it's like to have too much sun exposure. A basic first aid kit. We were without a first aid kit once when one of us fell, and all we had was a doggy bag to patch a leaking skin. So we used our doggy bag to stop the bleeding. You use what you got. It's really smart to have a basic first aid kit instead. And then, of course, a map. Now, there are a few other essentials that if I'm on the hike, I really want to have with me, simply because there are some good things about, for example, the stupid phone. One is Merlin, the bird app. I'm a birder and I do not go anywhere without Merlin anymore. I just want to see what birds are singing all around me. And you never know, you might need to call 911 to rescue me when I fall off the trail. And chocolate. I don't know about you, but I love chocolate. And it always perks up my appetite when I see some chocolate. Somebody brought some chocolate. I'll eat yours, so be careful. And extra toilet paper, you just never know. And one more essential if you're walking on the beach, make sure you know the tide. It's something I have done more than once is not pay really close attention to the tide and have to turn around sooner than I wish because I hadn't planned well for the tides. They do come up at times. In the winter, especially during the daytime. Summertime, it's mostly at night. And of course, leave no trace when we go hiking. Travel on durable surfaces. What a great word. Durable surfaces. Leave nothing behind. And leave what you do find. Respect the wildlife, of course, and be considerate of others. Now, back to the homework assignment. Why do you go hiking? And I wonder if we have some comments. We're going to get to those in just a little bit. I had a chance to think about this because I knew I was going to be talking about it. So I brainstormed and started thinking about all the reasons I go hiking, and I started to run out of room. Here's part of my list. It just kept going on and on as I realized there's a lot that I enjoy about hiking. But the most important one to me is that it's home. Being on the trail is home. Nature is not a place to visit. It's our home. It's where we live. It's planet Earth. We only have one planet, and it is our only home. We're seeing changes all across the planet. We're seeing changes in our government, political structures. We're certainly seeing change in our climate, seeing changes in how we take care of our Earth. And it's not going well, as you all know. Things are changing and not for the better. We can make a difference. Folks like Skagit Land Trust are making a huge difference. But this is our only home. And as I go hiking, I am constantly reminded this is the only home we have. Now, I was with my grandson, the one you saw a picture of, at the playground here in Anacortes called Storvik Park. I'd never noticed this before, but I was paying attention to the ground as I was walking into the playground. And in the ground, there is this plaque right on the ground. And it says there's always more than one way in. Come. Stay long enough to know what brought you here, what you leave behind, and what you take away. And I started thinking about that. To know what brought you here. Why are you here? Why do you go hiking? What you leave behind and what you take away. What do you take away when you go hiking? I know what this person is going to be taking away. One of many things. Just looking up at that tree and that experience says so many things to us. Or this person, achieving the summit, looking down on that view. You know, runners are paid by the snap of the tape across their chest as they finish the race and they hear the roar of the crowd. We are paid by the view at our feet. Adventure, it's not in the guidebook and it's not on the map. It's out in our home, out in the wilds. Seek and ye shall find. Now, a long time ago, 1,000 years ago, large groups of people headed across Europe and would pass through villages on their way. And as they passed through a village, the villagers would ask them, "Where are you heading?" And they'd say, "A la Santerre. We're heading to the Holy Land." That's where we get the word saunterers. They were going to the Holy Land. And our parks, the places that we visit, the places that we hike to, these are our holy lands, set aside for us, sanctuaries, places that mean something to us, places of joy, of adventure, of wonder, of connection, of fun, of beauty, of being alive. Now, I don't want to end the day without acknowledging the wonder that we are alive and that we actually get to live here, to hike here, to play here, to work here, to protect this land that we love. Thank you for being here with me. And I appreciate all of you joining with me as we go through these places that we love.
Thank you so much, Jack. That was
My
wonderful.
pleasure.
So these are some hiking resources. This is a link to, and I'll put these in the chat as well. This is a link to Jack's blog, and that's Mary Beth's as well, right? The two of you
Yes, it
both
is.
manage, Mary
Yes.
Beth Crandall both manage that blog and write for it. And then the hiking close to home guidebook, there's a link to it, although it sounds like Jack can get you a discount. So
I sure can.
might be better than the link I have. And then his Facebook page has a lot of cool content posted, including the hike of the week that he's been doing. I also wanted to mention a Skagit Land Trust resource called Lands We Love Skagit Adventures that we put out for our 30th anniversary. And we have that in English and in Spanish. And that shows people, so introduces people to some of the hikes that we have on our properties. Sometimes parking is limited on our properties, but we do have some that you can go and park at and hike into. So that's probably the best thing is to just take a look at the resource. I included that with some links in the chat here, and it'll come to you by email as well. We also have staff picks. We asked our staff to pick 10 hikes that they really like in the Northwest region. So I'm going to share that one too. And I wanted to show this great picture that I dug up from our photo archives. Jack, do you remember which hike this is?
This is on Kickett Island, as I recall. And those scoundrels just picked me up without me knowing it. And there we are. They were going to throw me in the water.
Yeah, so this is a good preview for when we do get an in-person hike with you. You know, it's really hands-on, and you know, anything can
Not
happen.
that many hands.
And then here's another hike picture I found. There you are in the back, right, in the blue shirt
Yes.
there. Do you
Yes.
remember which one that one is?
That was a hike out to Rosario Head
Oh, okay.
from
Yeah,
Bowman Bay. Yes.
yeah. Those hikers look quite happy.
Mhm.
Um, with that, I mean, is there anything else you wanted to share, Jack, before we wrap up the call? I don't see a lot of other comments yet in the chat, so
Just
speak
appreciate
now or
everybody joining in and hope to see you out in the trails somewhere.
great. Well, thanks again. This
My
was so
pleasure.
wonderful.
Thank you for having me.